Freedom Media is a WA-based independent media outlet with the goal of providing unbiased journalism, notably without any government narrative. Now, if you've had the unfortunate pleasure of paying attention to the 2021 political sphere, then the naming of this group may have already set off some red flags for you, which I can confirm. Basically, Freedom Media WA is a dog whistle for conspiracy theories ranging from anti-vaccine, anti-mandate, hell, sometimes outright COVID denial news. However, regardless of whatever their talking point of the day is, their core ideology is fighting against the mainstream narrative regarding COVID, believing that the government, mainstream media, and Big Pharma are all in cahoots with one another for the purpose of control and removal of freedoms. And it is for this reason that I wanted to make this video, because I am not the big media, I am not the government, I am literally just some guy. I'm another independent thinker that does his own research. And if Freedom Media WA really does believe what they spout, then I am the exact person that they are a fan of, and I want to use this video to debunk some of their theories. Unfortunately, that does mean that this video probably won't be super entertaining, since I want to use this time to actually analyze and debunk what they're saying. I'm not here just to laugh at conspiracy theorists.
They didn't think this day would come.
What country are we in?
I feel like I'm in North Korea.
As fun as that does sound.
In Israel right now, more people have died from complications from the vaccine, and I invert those comments when I say vaccine. More people have died from the injection, right, than have from COVID in Israel right now, and they're up to their 4th jab.
Now, I don't know if this dude just misspoke, but this is obviously not true. While at least 8,000 people have died from COVID in Israel at the time of this video, there is no evidence of people dying as a result of the jab, and no one is arguing the contrary. This dude is just such a free thinker, he was able to make up data from nothing. This lack of evidence is why I believe he misspoke and got his conspiracies confused, because there was a myth being spouted that the Israel vaccine killed more people than COVID would have killed during a specific time period, but even that claim, while less harsh, is still entirely false. The origins of this myth came from an analysis of the Health Ministry data stating that the Pfizer vaccine killed 40 times the amount of elderly people and 260 times the amount of the younger population than the disease itself would have killed during a specific 5-week period. However, if you actually look at the data that this analysis came from, you'll see that the opposite is true, and that it actually points to the vaccine reducing the likelihood of dying from COVID. The analysis didn't account for the vaccination requiring 2 doses for full immunity, which can then take weeks to develop. Instead, this dude has just misinterpreted the data and assumed that 1 dose of the vaccine can provide immediate protection, and any death of someone with a vaccine was because of the vaccine. But like we learnt in primary school science class, correlation does not equal causation. Vaccinated people were just dying of COVID because they haven't developed full immunity. And when you're dealing with a population that is majority vaccinated, it makes sense that they make up most of the deaths. But now that enough time has passed in Israel for people to become fully immune, the sub 17% of unvaccinated Israelis now make up well over half of the COVID-related deaths, proving that the vaccination campaign in Israel has been hugely successful. To reiterate, vaccines did not kill these people, it was COVID.
I've got less of a chance of transmitting it than the people that have had this jab.
This is absolutely not true, but I understand that confusing statements from public health authorities and the media has caused some misunderstanding about how the transmission rates differ depending on vaccination. But to be clear, vaccines reduce transmission significantly. Multiple, very large studies have been conducted around the globe regarding different strains and vaccine brands, and they have found that transmission can be reduced up to 97% by having a vaccine. This is because those that are vaccinated have a decreased risk of getting infected in the first place, but even if they do, the disease is milder and for a shorter amount of time. Furthermore, booster shots are a great way to help control transmission in the longer term, and while vaccinated people aren't 100% free of transmission, the risk for a vaccinated individual is much lower than the unvaccinated. It's like condoms. fucking with a rubber doesn't stop a baby 100%, but it's a hell of a lot better than without. So where did this woman get the bold idea that the unvaccinated people have less of a chance of transmission, let alone the same? I'm not really sure. It could have come from the fear of vaccine-induced viral shedding, where they think vaccinated people can spread the virus contained in the vaccine. But this fear doesn't really make sense, since none of the COVID-19 vaccines actually contain the live virus. Instead, the vaccines contain the instructions to train the body to work against the virus. And even if you did shed the proteins created from these instructions, it's not enough to cause infection. So no, lady, you don't have less of a chance of transmitting the virus. In fact, you have a much higher chance, with transmission between the unvaccinated being the primary cause for spread, and as a consequence, the restrictions that come along with it.
The ivermectin is an amazing drug. It was already used for parasites, but then they found it was very good in suppressing COVID, and the reason for this is that it encouraged the use of what are called zinc fingers, which are in part of the body itself, and used protein-wise to cause viruses not to reproduce inside human cells, because as long as you've got enough zinc in your body, you can fight these things off.
Currently in India, they've stopped the vaccines.
Exactly. Apart from one state, Tamil Nadu, which gave the vaccine, other states like Uttar Pradesh brought in ivermectin, which is dirt cheap, and the pandemic went away, and that's why we haven't heard of it for the last 2 months.
One of the most frustrating parts about conspiracy theorists is that they change their evidence to fit their narrative. In the early days of the pandemic, hydroxychloroquine was the miracle drug being squandered by Big Pharma, but now it's been replaced with ivermectin when the hydroxychloroquine case fell apart. But, just like hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin is not the miracle drug that this dude wants you to believe. Now let's be clear here, ivermectin is an amazing drug for fighting parasites. It is not, however, an amazing drug for fighting COVID-19. And at my most generous, I would say that the evidence supporting ivermectin is weak at best. So where did all this hype for ivermectin come from? Well, early on in the pandemic, an Australian study found that ivermectin could inhibit coronavirus replication with an extremely large dose in a laboratory setting. This early evidence sparked reasonable interest for the usability of ivermectin in treating COVID. However, while some studies did find potential benefits using ivermectin, many did not. And the studies that have found that benefit have been scrutinized for being low quality, with small sample sizes, or using a dose so high that it can't be achieved in humans. One of the most comprehensive meta-analyses into ivermectin, stating that it can reduce COVID-19 mortality by 90%, actually had to be withdrawn because the data it was looking at was faked. However, this study has now reappeared with proper data and found that there is no correlation between ivermectin and COVID-19 benefits, and that the more biased the study, the more benefits for ivermectin were found. This isn't exclusive to only this analysis. Study after study has found that ivermectin benefits are only found in low quality studies with a high risk of bias. Meanwhile, the good data shows that ivermectin is useless against COVID-19. It does not reduce mortality, hospital stay, or viral clearance. And keep in mind, studies are still going for ivermectin use because it's an interesting place to research. But the data right now says it's uncertain at best. So to be as confident as this dude is blatant misinformation. So what about Uttar Pradesh and the drop in COVID cases in India? It is true that some Indian territories, including Uttar Pradesh, did promote ivermectin use. However, there is no evidence that ivermectin was responsible for the drop in cases. Remember that statement I said earlier about correlation not implying causation? First off, just because Uttar Pradesh recommended ivermectin isn't evidence that it resulted in widespread use. The Indian Council of Medical Research literally stated that while the drug could be used, it is based on a low certainty of evidence. Secondly, there are many other factors which have reasonably assumed to have caused the drop in rates. This guy conveniently ignores that there was a vaccination campaign going on, he doesn't consider the high proportion of the previously infected, and he doesn't mention the number of lockdowns that were implemented followed by night and weekend restrictions. Thirdly, Uttar Pradesh isn't even COVID-free. Only half of the territories were COVID-free at the time of people claiming Ivermectin saved India. There isn't a scheme by Big Pharma to suppress it. Ivermectin is just not very good for battling COVID, and the supply decreases aren't because Big Pharma are suppressing it, it's because people like you keep fucking buying it, driving up demand. Similar to the biggest advocates against COVID restrictions being the main contributors, Ivermectin fanatics are responsible for the drug's fucked availability.
Mr. McGowan, this is tyranny. And why doesn't he listen to the world experts? Peter McCullough, Dolores Cahill, these are professors of immunology, virology, 30, 40 years. We have Professor Robert Malone, who invented the mRNA. He is telling all the world countries to stop. We have Professor Michael Yeadon, 17 years with Pfizer. He is telling everyone to stop. And yet McGowan won't listen, he won't debate. This is tyranny, and this is criminal.
The golden goose for conspiracy theorists are these so-called experts, people with a background that can give some legitimacy to bullshit claims. But let's be clear here, your background, your degrees, does not clear you from being able to spread misinformation and fall for lies. To put it bluntly, it doesn't stop you from being wrong. And that's a big part of science, proving others wrong. And these people have no issue discrediting other experts that don't support them, saying that they're being bought out to push a political narrative. So what stops your so-called experts from doing the same thing? Simply listing off names of people is not an argument. What matters is what they're saying. And it's not a politician's role to talk to every Tom, Dick and Harry that has an opinion. And I think you should have taken a page out of your own playbook, because the people he has just listed off have no fucking idea what they're talking about. And when you do a slither of research into who they are, it becomes clear that they have no interest in telling the truth. They are only pushing an agenda. Peter McCullough is a cardiologist and one of the earliest advocates for hydroxychloroquine, which has now been debunked. He literally has sat in front of government like this dude wants, but they still haven't accepted his claims because they are not founded in fact. His claim that people under 50 don't need the vaccines when we've proven that 20 to 49-year-olds are the biggest contributors towards COVID resurgences. He said that those that have COVID have complete immunity even though we've objectively proven that reinfection is possible, and he can't even interpret scientific data, stating that there is no asymptomatic spread when referring to a specific Chinese study. But the author of the exact study actually had to come out and correct McCullough to say that the study didn't conclude that the asymptomatic can't spread the virus. So why are you praising a man that has literally been proven wrong? Dolores Cahill is another former professor who has been laughed out of the academic community due to pushing unfounded claims, such as that children that wear masks will have lower IQ. Spoiler alert, they won't. Her own students even produced a 33-page manuscript debunking everything she has said regarding COVID, and let's not forget, possibly her greatest moment.
You're restricting my entrance. Do you know if you restrict someone, it's actually rape under the law?
Really?
It is rape under the law. If you prevent someone from leaving or entering a building, I am a woman.
Oh yeah?
You are a man. I
Thank
don't
you.
know you. You are restricting my thing.
What a great person to be championing for, dude. Robert Malone is a fun one because one of the easiest ways to catch a bullshit expert is that they like to gloat about their credentials before making their claims, instead of just letting their claims stand for themselves. And like this bloke said, Malone likes to claim that he was the inventor of the mRNA vaccine, but But first off, he wasn't the inventor of the mRNA vaccine. He was an early contributor towards the research, but was only one of hundreds who helped move it forward. The actual main two credited for the development of the mRNA vaccine are Dr. Drew Weissman and Katalin Karikó, both of who are very vocally supportive of the COVID vaccines, and unsurprisingly, he has also been called out for spouting misinformation. He has said that the FDA hasn't given full approval to Pfizer when it objectively has, and he's retweeted multiple studies which have had to be retracted because they were objectively poor quality. Once again, why are you advocating for someone that objectively has been proven wrong and then lies about it? Michael Yeadon, unsurprisingly, is another scientist who has been proven wrong dozens of times. This is the same dude that said COVID was essentially over in the UK in October 2020. It wasn't. This is the same dude that said there is no basis for a second wave, only for a second wave to take off in Britain weeks later. And talk about being bought out, because this is the same dude that initially said COVID-19 is not going away until we have a vaccine, and a vaccine might be along towards the end of 2021 if we're really lucky, before dramatically switching to an anti-vaccine rhetoric. Strange that you don't bring that up. These are your experts, dude? People that have been laughed out of academic communities or objectively proven wrong or been caught outright lying? These people have an agenda. And if you had any respect for proper experts, you wouldn't be siding with people pushing a narrative and building data to support that narrative, which is the exact fucking thing that you're trying to criticize. The rest of the video is pretty uninteresting, but it includes all the archetypes for the 2021 conspiracy theorist. You've got the Aussie bogan talking about the dying spirit.
It breaks my heart that the spirit of Australia is being crushed by governments who are determined to destroy the will of the people. I remember when our rivers were free and we could go where we want. I remember not having fences up around saying you can't go here and you can't go there. What happened to the Australian spirit when 14 and 15-year-old men would line up and lie about their age and die at war? Today we can't even stand up and say no to a jab. There should be thousands of us here gathered saying, what are you doing, government?
First off, I don't think 14-year-olds dying in a war is something that we should strive towards. I think we've all pretty much acknowledged that was a bad thing. Secondly, you can say no. They're not tying you down and injecting you, but you can't have a cry when you lose your job or you can't travel. Health requirements have always existed. Hey, dude at the end of the video, why do you think you need to wear a high vis to work? Almost like it's a mandated health and safety requirement? There has always been vaccination requirements for healthcare workers. There has always been conditions for employment. But this dude acts like we're fucking nomads traveling the earth where we can go anywhere and do anything, but that's not how it works. And I have zero sympathy for people that lose their jobs because they don't want to get the jab. I do, however, have sympathy for those that did get jabbed but are waiting for the selfish that don't. Quick reminder, all these loss of freedoms that you're complaining about are your own fucking fault. We also have the religious nut using crocodile tears to appear sympathetic, but actually listen to what she has to say.
If we look through history at what happens to communist dictators, Romania is a good example. What awaits Mao Gowan is not good. May the fury of God rain down on him.
To me, that borderline comes across as a death threat, comparing Mark to Nicolae Ceausescu, the communist leader that was executed, and saying the same awaits for Mark. Sorry love, but no amount of fake crying justifies a fucking execution threat. And that's only one of Freedom Media WA's videos. There's more, a lot more. Thankfully, the anti-vax movement and this page is so small to have any real impact, but it's still an interesting insight into the movement on a local scale. And Freedom Media WA, if you actually stuck around to watch the end of the video, I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. I also give you full permission to upload this video on your page unedited because I'm a free thinker, I'm a real person, and if that's what your channel is about, then this video meets your criteria and I think it's something that your viewers should watch. Thank you all for watching. I may post more analysis into their content in the future if there's enough interesting content, but please get vaccinated people, it's the right thing to do.